Welcome to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits, The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And today we decided, hey, it's 2024. It's the new year, so it makes sense to talk about what are all these resolutions that we're doing and how do we even approach taking a look back and then assessing for the future. Like, what does this even look like? And I want to make it last all year. I want it to be something that is not like a one and done moment, but that I have goals that are actually something that I want to work on throughout the year. So we're going to be talking about resolutions and trying to make them more practical, and make sense of like how you're approaching this new year. Day one, you haven't messed up yet.
Hopefully.
Right?
Does
Hopefully.
anyone even do resolutions anymore?
I think people do. I mean, I've seen it all over the internet. I've seen people like posting about, resolutions and stuff like that. But I do think there is starting to be a little like, um, people are starting to get like, I don't do that anymore. Like people I know are starting to be like, I don't do it anymore. But what I'm thinking is that I don't want to throw away the whole concept of like what it means to like resolutions itself to me means that this is a great opportunity to spend some time looking at what do I want my next year to look like? It's like this long-term goal that and I'm not going to lay out like all of the sequential pieces, but I do want a sense of being very intentional about what do I want? What do I want? What's coming in me and on me? And do I want to let it go because it's outdated or I'm choosing not to? Or do I really want to focus on this?
Okay, so what's the difference between a resolution and what you're talking about? Like what you've adopted as a practice?
Personally, I think resolutions are what our stick is to society. So what we should do. So I think resolutions is like this hype word that people have come up with, that if somebody does a resolution and it's actually an inside job, maybe it is what I'm talking about. But most people that I see, and for me myself, I'll just talk about me myself. For me, when I've done resolutions, it's been, oh, well, this is the time of year that I need to do this. This is what I should do. So sometimes it's in the absence of having this inner alignment to it's time to reassess. Just because it's like technically the end of the year and the beginning of another year doesn't mean that it resonates inside of me, that it really is time to reassess. Like I could be midway through some goals.
Yeah.
So sometimes it feels like it takes me off track because it gets me thinking about new things that I'm like, oh, I should be going to the gym. I should lose the 10 pounds from the holiday. I should refocus and do these things. But do I want to?
Yeah, so what I heard you saying and what I wrote down was resolutions feel performative versus what we've kind of adopted as a practice that is more transformative.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
So like a performative resolution, like you said, would be like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, starting January 1st. But a transformative resolution might be something to the effect of, my body feels better when I get daily movement. And what does it look like to incorporate daily movement into my life?
Bingo.
What am I doing already that feels good?
Yeah.
How could I do that differently or make it more regular? So it's incorporating something that's already present and just being really mindful of what that looks like for you versus the performative resolution, which is like everybody does these things and I should, or I want to look like what everyone else is looking like around this time of the year.
We'll look at it this way. And I love how you just described that because it makes a lot of sense to me. Like if I were to say, I'm going to walk every day. That's what I want to do this year. I want to make sure that I'm walking at least 10 minutes. I'm going to get out there. Why 10 minutes? Because I know that if I do 10 minutes, I'm doing 30. I just got to get out the door. 10 minutes I can commit to. Around the block, I can commit to. But I will always walk more. So for me, I know my body feels really good when I move it consistently. But if I were to go to somebody else and say, yeah, I'm going to walk every day, I'm just going to, walk around the block, I'm going to maybe do 10 minutes, maybe more, somebody might be like, oh, really pushing yourself. Like, because the reality is my physical body to you, I won't look different.
Right.
My goals aren't for you, right? My goals are for me.
But resolutions do feel like they're for other people. Like everybody shares their resolutions. It's like, hold me accountable, you know?
So if I end up gaining a couple of pounds, or you see that I don't have defined muscle or whatever it is, you might be like, oh, you're not doing anything. Yeah. But it's like, what if inside I feel stamina? I feel like when I walk through the airport and I have to go really fast from terminal C to terminal E in Chicago, and I get there in 12 minutes instead of the 20 it says, I'm like, and I'm okay, I'm not even winded, then that says to me, my exercise is working for me. Like I'm capable and I have the energy to do what is on my inner list of things that I want to do in this world. So I'm choosing things that make me feel good and light me up and contribute to what I'm here to do.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. We're talking about resolutions versus the transformative processes that we implement. But I feel like I implement those sort of transformative processes throughout the year as things come up. But I do something completely different for the new year.
Okay, how
like for last year, and like I said before we recorded, I don't know when this started, but I started setting an intention, like a word intention for the new year, probably a few years ago. And my last year's word intention was abundance. And
now, did you choose this, or did you physically choose it, or did you choose it?
I like intuitively chose it.
Okay. All right.
So I actually remember having conversations at the end of last year, well, 2 years ago, end of 2022, with close friends around my word for the year and what I was intending with that word. So it was like, I feel that 2023 is going to be an abundant year for me. And what that looks like is there's going to be an abundance of joy, an abundance of love, maybe financial abundance, maybe provision in different areas that I'm not anticipating. But it was like a general intention, almost for like the way I wanted to co-create with the universe in the new year. So two things that the reasons why I do this, two things. One, because it gives like a general structure to the unfolding of the year, but it doesn't say you have to, like, to the universe or to God, you have to work in this way or it's not working. Like, I trust you enough to set this intention and then leave space for it to work its way out.
So when you say it sets the, I think you described it as generalized intention. Is that how you said it? Or structure? Yeah. Generalized structure. So are you saying that it sounded to me like that was an energetic vibration?
Yeah. So here's how I actually picture this in my head. Kids do these science experiments with like strings, or like they'll build like a structure out of like toothpicks. And then they'll drop this structure into a glass of water with a solution in it, either a salt solution or a sugar solution. So you've given a structure for what you want to be built onto, but you have no idea what the final product is going to look like. Like, you know that there's some sort of crystalline structure that's going to build itself around what you drop into the solution. And all you're doing is giving it something to attach to. So a resolution doesn't give anything to attach to because it's already fully structured. There's nothing, there's no room for anything to be built upon that. And the word intention is like one strand. You're like, okay, I'm picking something that's super clear and focused, like singular focus, but at the same time leave so much room for the universe to build in any way that's like my higher and better self creating through that.
So how does somebody know with that generalized structure? Because I love what you just said. It makes so much sense to me. I've never thought of it in that way. But how does one know then when they're moving forward what fits to act towards if you don't have, I think we think that we have to be in
Love
control
this.
and we have to
Yeah.
have, like, it has to look a certain way. How do we know when it's something that we act on?
Okay, so you know those conversations that I had leading into the year.
Mhm.
So I would, in those conversations, I would physically embody the feeling of that word, like the vibrational feeling of that word. Like,
So
what
lead
does
us through it. What's it feel like?
abundance feel like?
What's it feel like?
It feels like, so abundance was last year, this year's alignment. But for abundance, the
We'll pick
feeling,
this year.
okay, so alignment. So for me, I chose alignment for this year intuitively again, not like something that I pulled. It just dropped in and it felt right. So alignment for this year feels like when an opportunity comes in, I'm going to measure that against this still feeling, like the surface of water being really crystal clear, and you can see your reflection perfectly in it. And it's still and it's peaceful and it's calm. And that to me is alignment, is what alignment feels like. So when an opportunity comes in, it may be a really large thing, it may be a scary thing, it may be something I never pictured for myself before, but if I hold myself in the scene of that opportunity and put myself into it, like if I were offered a position with a company and I wanted to see if that fits with my alignment intention, I would just sit myself quietly in meditation and put myself into the scene of being in that place. And does that feel like what alignment feels like? And I think it's also helpful if people are stuck on this, like, what does alignment feel like? What does abundance feel like? Pick a time, if you've got a word intention like joy, pick a time in your life when you've clearly felt that before. What did that feel like? Because that's a memory. That's a
Mhm.
somatic memory. Like your body can conjure up the memory of what that felt like. Sit in that, and then you've got something to measure by. Like there's a metric now.
Mhm.
So now when you look at these opportunities that flow in, when you look at all of the things that you're presented with throughout the year, you can sit in that and compare that to this metric that you've got for the feeling of that intention. And now you can go, okay, does this resonate? Is this vibrating at the same place that my intention is?
Here's a challenge. I love that process that you're describing. And sometimes it's a clear, emphatic yes. Like
Yeah,
it's like
you
absolutely
don't even need to
aligned.
sit
You
in
don't
it.
need to
Yeah.
sit in it.
Mhm.
Now, I'll take that feeling of the easy alignment as being historically, I've taken that to be like, that's it. That's a definitive, like, that's it. And then there's sometimes the emphatic no, like, absolutely not. This is not what I want to do. I don't. But then there's this middle ground of fear because you don't know how, the uncertainty, you don't know how. So there's things that I've had and things that I'm even working on that I'm like, this is going to be hard. This is going to be challenging. Because it's hard, it's challenging. Maybe even it doesn't align with some of the other things. Like, for example, it may long term produce financial gain, but short term it's not. So it's not gonna, so then it's like I start getting in the way of doing the work of it because there's only so much bandwidth. Like I'm a person who has multiple things that I want to do this year. I'm not like I got all these things on autopilot and then I'm going to add maybe one new thing or drop something off. I'm like, and this has always been this way. I'm just, I'm ambitious and I want to accomplish a lot in what I'm here to do. So sometimes there are barriers to things that will stop me or because I'll think, oh, that's not aligned. That's not what an aligned feeling like aligned is an emphatic yes or, an emphatic no, let it go. But this middle ground, sometimes what I'm finding is absolutely in the universe, I've asked for something in this general way, and then an answer that actually would align with like these numbers or these specificity that I have. I'll get an answer that's aligned with that. But then if I'm like, like I'm struggling, how do we distinguish between, yeah, you're struggling, so that means you got to dig in and you got to figure this out so that you can feel in alignment to get rid of the barriers, or that it's like, yeah, let that go, you've got too much angst. So what does alignment, like, if is it always a positive feeling?
Okay, there's a lot there. There's like 5 things to pull apart.
Okay, pick them
Okay,
apart.
So here's my question, and we've talked about this, but I think it'll be a helpful illustration for people to hear. So when you got the answer that aligned with your initial intention that you set, what happened between that and then feeling sort of shaky and unsure and kind of hitting pause on it?
That's a great question. I think number one, I have an image of what success looks like, and it's easier than what, like, I think I have to be aware of what failure looks like to me. So like I'll use writing for example. So when I left my job 3 years ago and I was going to write this book, and that was going to be, just step one of many things that I did, I'd figure it out from beyond that. I got what I needed to with my book proposal done. I sent it in, and I sent it to like 6 different places. And I heard back from 2 of the 6, and actually heard doesn't really align with what we're doing, despite the fact that I only chose places that I knew it aligned with, because they said this types of books would align, but then they said it didn't align. So then I was like, well, am I even like, do I even understand this industry? Like, I researched, I didn't just send these out blindly to this many publishers. I actually sent them to the publishers I felt like they were in alignment with. 2 of the 6 responded. The other 4 of the 6 didn't. So nobody has got the book. And then I'm like, well, here's the other thing. I have to have a huge following. Well, I'm not the kind of person who's going to have probably a huge following. I don't know that I'm going to have a huge following. So if I don't have a huge following, I can't get a traditional publisher. That just seems like so not creative, or like, to me, I'm like, you can't tell me, like, there's always somebody who was like, back in the day when Liz Gilbert was starting out, she didn't have a following. When Ernest Hemingway was starting, he didn't have a following. We didn't have those things. Somebody actually had to have the talent to see who had talent. And now an agent's just like an algorithm. Literally, agents are like, what's the point of an agent? Pretty soon we can just get rid of agents and just be like, well, let's just put some metrics in there and we'll find the people who have the highest following.
Okay, we're gonna pause.
I'm sorry, but man, that just chaps my ass.
Okay. When you put out, we're gonna go with the book. When you put out that you wanted a publisher and you wanted to make this book a reality, when you launched that out into the universe and you set that intention, what I'm not hearing or seeing is you acknowledging that all the circumstances that the universe then presents you with from the moment you launch that till the moment of completion are all conspiring in your favor to make that happen. We see with the ego, mind, and body, and we see a failure or a rejection. But what the universe sees is everything that is coming your way from the moment you launch that till the moment it is done is pushing you closer to the highest outcome for that ask that you put out into the universe. So your rejections are all pushing you closer to your yes. Your pauses and your, having to re-edit and having to
Find a
finish
storage
chapters,
coach.
right, find a store, but all of those things are conspiring in your favor to get you closer to that thing. Like, okay, example from my life. Christmas Day, my car check engine light comes on. And I immediately think, oh God, this is it. Because this car has been a problem for years. Like, more than half the time we've had it, the check engine light keeps coming on, and it's been transmission issues and spark plug issues and Lord knows what. And it's tons of money we've poured into it. It just ended up being a bad car. So Christmas Day, the check engine light comes on, and I limp the thing home, praying that we just get home on Christmas Day. And the next day, I had to call the tow truck. I had to send it into the shop, and I'm like, oh, good grief, here we go. Like, the last thing I wanted on Christmas was for my car to break down and have to think about, what if this is it? What if this time I'm struggling financially? What if I don't have the money to repair it? I'm not going to have a vehicle. Now I don't have a vehicle. It's the day after Christmas and I'm stuck at home without a vehicle and 4 kids. And this sucks. This is awful. But what I'd been putting out for a whole year going into that circumstance was, someone, I had even told the kids, I said, someone's going to give us our next vehicle. I just feel it. I'm not going to have to worry about it. I don't have the money for it. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I trust that that's what's going to happen. So who am I to say, oh no, universe, you can't make my car break down to make sure that we get a new vehicle? That's not an acceptable method to bring about the manifestation of this intention.
But here's the nuance. Something in you knew that right away. And it wasn't like, when you felt it, you were like, yes, that's just the way that it is. Like, you didn't fight that. You didn't come up with that. You didn't say, oh, what could be the right attitude to have? My right attitude could be to just think that somebody else is going to take care of this. That's what we want. Somebody else said, something in you said, this is it. So that's a very different nuanced feeling, because something in you told you the answer. And when that they told you the answer, when that answer came to you, it aligned, you knew it was true, you held it, because you were like, you didn't even question it. You didn't even go, well, that's ridiculous. You were like, yes, that's it. What I'm talking about is something comes to you, you're doing something, but then you're like, you're far enough down the road with something. Like, if you, for example, had said, oh, I feel like somebody's going to take care of this car for me, and then they didn't, and you had to pour a whole bunch of money into it, and then you kept doing that, 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 you kept doing that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, if you're going
so
against something that is inside you. So there's a very clear alignment that comes through, and you can take it, and then it acts like it aligns. But then when you do aligned action, not everything is on an immediate time frame.
exactly.
Some things
Because,
are on a longer
like
time
we've said tons of times before, you get to say what and why,
Mhm.
but the universe decides how and when. So if the universe decided that the how was that my car was going to break down on Christmas, and the when was going to be 2 days later, that fast, taken care of, done. All I had to do through that process was just do what was already coming and what was already aligned. I didn't have to go start making calls. Hey, can you help me pay for a new vehicle? Like, there was none of that. It was just, well, I may not have a car. This may be it. What do I need to do next? Well, I'm going to need to go look at cars. Okay, I'm going to make an appointment to go look at cars. How am I going to go look at cars? Well, I'm going to need someone to watch the kids so I can go look at cars. Okay, do that. And just, that's the alignment of taking the next right steps. It was obvious. It was like, well, obviously I'm not going to sit around and go, okay, where's my car? I'll take delivery now. Like, what's the obvious next thing? Well, I need to go test drive cars. How do I know what car if I don't go test drive them? It was just obvious aligned steps, but it could have taken, so it turned out it was a spark plug. But the mechanic said, it's doing this constantly.
because
You
of the
never
yeah.
know what the engine is bad. So it might have been a spark plug this time, but next time it's going to be the engine.
Mhm.
And you're not going to have a car, and it could be really unsafe to keep driving.
Right.
So I could have gotten a new spark plug and kept driving the car. And it could have driven for 2 more years, who knows? But that's not the way the universe worked it out. But if in the case of your book publishing, who are we to say how and when that gets done? What's the next aligned right step?
So when do you shift gears? So I've been working on the book for 3 years. Like I've been working on the book for 11 years. I've been wanting to do the book for 11 years. For 4 years, it's been 4 years since I took the trip. I've been working on the book. I've had to add other things in the last 2 years because I can't just write a book and not have it published and not have money, right? So number one, I won't ever stop. It's still
Okay.
mine.
Okay.
It's still mine.
Great.
Like I know that that idea hasn't left from me, and I do know that.
Okay.
I
So
do
you're going to
know
see it to
that.
completion. Okay. Good.
No, but it's not even a dogged persistence. It's not
Right.
like I'm being stubborn with it.
No, because
But
you know
that's an
it's
important
yours.
distinction. That's an important distinction for people. You can want something egoically so much. You can be so prideful. I'm not prideful about this book. If
Right.
if the universe said to me,
Right.
you're not going to do it, I'd be like, okay. I'd probably be like, well, okay, fine. What's next?
Right.
But it still feels
That's the
like
distinction.
that's like inside. So this is important for people to understand. Like it still feels like mine. Now the question then, it doesn't mean though that I can feel like something is mine. And this is where it gets back to the resolutions. You can feel like something is yours, but you can have confusion about the step because it's multi-phasal. It's not a one and done. It's not like, oh, I need a new car. I think this is how it's going to happen. It does happen and you're done. And in 4 days, you have a new car. It's not everything's like that, you know? So how do people, when they have the overall arching idea is I'm going to do this, because I think people can give up because the way that it's not the generalized structure. It's a very specific structure. And
Okay,
that's the challenge.
okay. So I wanna dissect a couple things here, and I gotta write this down so I don't forget. But
Yeah.
but you said how do you know when it's not time or is time to shift gears? What do you mean by that in terms of your book? What would shifting gears look like?
Like, what do you mean? Like, in what way? Like,
Well, that's what I'm asking you, because you said, well, how do I know it's not time to shift gears?
oh, like,
And what does that mean?
like I'm redoing my entire book proposal. Like all publishers do a particular proposal in a certain way. The one that I want to go with has a different structure. So I have to do it completely differently. So I've been now preparing for 5 months for one publisher to create a new format and paying for help to do that just to get the proposal to them. Spending like the number of hours of my life in spending doing this work, not knowing if it's going to produce anything. And I'm not even sure that production's part of it. Like sometimes you don't even know when you're being asked to do something or you're going to do it. You don't even know if it's cultivating you in some way and it wasn't about the book.
Right.
And you're being cultivated to finish something or cultivated to experience what it feels like to do that. Or maybe it was I was supposed to go through my grandmother with the process of doing this book. Who knows? So it's not even like I think some of it is it's not a finished product. So again, I want to get this back to resolutions. Resolutions, like I'm not even with the book. I have things that I want to do for this year. I don't even have, the only thing I have is get this proposal to this publisher.
And that, hold on, let me put that in a question. Does that feel like it aligns with the initial yes?
Yes.
Do the book. Okay.
Yeah.
And will you know, do you trust yourself to know when something comes in that's different, but that is aligned?
Yeah, I think that it really is. I think what you're getting to is we can't theoretically know all the steps. We can't know that if A doesn't work, then we're going to go to B, and this is what B looks like. Literally, each path rises, like the road rises. And I think the challenge becomes, when I got a degree, I knew that it was going to be these 3 years and it was going to look like this. And if I do A, B, and C, then I would get to the degree. This is one of those things that there is no A plus B equals C. This is literally like you can work for years and years and years, and the way that the rules are aligned, you don't meet the qualifications, but somehow a part of me is like, well, I'm supposed to do it and the universe can do anything, so I'm going to keep doing it. It doesn't logically make sense, right? So it's an interesting process to keep pouring yourself into something that you feel like is yours to do. And I think sometimes, again, getting back to the resolutions, sometimes we want to do things that don't make sense to ourselves and others, but yet we feel like it's ours to do. It's like this inner knowing, but yet the details of it are so vague and inconspicuous that it's like that's part of the faith, is trusting that one action will lead to something miraculous. And miraculous just means something that's unforeseen. You don't see a way. To me, miraculous is you have no idea how it's going to, your action is going to lead to any kind of substantial gain, but it's the right thing.
What if, and I'm not saying this is the case, but what if the book is one of your major stepping stones on a path to a higher and bigger calling?
Meaning more aligned to what I'm here to do.
Right. And would it be okay if at some point suddenly the universe just releases you and says, we're done here?
It would, but when you said that, my throat just got really tight.
So it's probably not the case.
Yeah, my throat closed up.
I mean, not good, but good, because that's evidence.
Right.
It's all data.
Right.
It's all data. But I asked this because we just drove past an old house that I used to live in yesterday. And something in me told me, I want to take you by the place I used to live and show you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain why. It just felt right. And it was one of those things where it's an intuitive drop in and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And you just go with it. Like there's no questioning. Like I think we've gotten good at saying yes to things that drop in and they feel right.
Right.
So we drive by this old house and I turn the corner and it hits me and I'm like, oh my God, all the windows are boarded up. There's 2 dumpsters in the driveway. There was a massive fire in this house and it looks like a total loss. And it was like, number one, why did I need to see that? Because clearly I needed to see that and there was a message there. And we're going into this conversation and it's critical that people understand things like this. And 2, what do I do with this data? Like, okay, I needed to see it. And now what does it mean? Like, how does it connect and why was it important? So the way that I thought about it was that house was a stepping stone. And that house initially, when I moved from where I was before up to Rochester, I had this was like probably one of the first times I ever had a really strong intuitive pull of this is the right thing for you to do. And it makes no logical sense whatsoever. I didn't have a home in Rochester, didn't have a good paying job, moved our house and we had 2 kids, moved into a storage unit and started living with my parents an hour away outside of Rochester so I could commute to Rochester, drop the kids off at a babysitter and go to a job where I was making minimum wage just so I could be in Rochester because the intuitive pull to be here was that strong. I couldn't say no. I knew I had to be here. And when I saw that house, I thought, oh my gosh, this is our home. This town is beautiful. This house is perfect. It's got all of these features that I wanted. Like, thank you, universe. This is amazing. And the price was great. And then the things started. Like, there were so many obstacles to us being able to get this house. So many things tied up the process. I mean, everything that could have possibly tied up the process, and I mean everything, did. Stopped us and stopped us and stopped us and stopped us and stopped us. And I'm like, what is going on? I knew I was supposed to be here. I thought this was my house. Why is this so difficult? And so I had a choice. I could either work against the obstacles and keep going down the path that I thought was the right path, or at some point I could respond to the obstacles and go, enough is enough. This is definitely a closed door. This isn't the right way to go. And at that point, I felt into it, and the answer was, you've got to walk away. As painful as this feels and as confusing as it is, you have to walk away. You can't stay here. There's just so many closed doors that I knew after a while, like, if my life keeps going in the direction of all these obstacles, it's going to feel really misaligned and wrong. So we walked away, and we got the house that we're in right now, and the rest is history. But then we drove by that house, and I couldn't help but think, oh my gosh, that would have been another obstacle for me if I would have kept working against the flow of what the universe wanted.
So what your story just said is give up the book.
Why?
Because you're just describing it. There's obstacles after obstacles after obstacles after obstacles. And finally you were like, this isn't it.
But it felt right when I walked away. As painful as it was and as frustrating as it was like a release. Like,
so this is the distinction then. It's not all the details, and it's not asking yourself, is this right or not? It's getting into our body and feeling.
exactly.
If I were to stay, how does it feel?
Felt misaligned.
And as if I
wrong.
were to go, how would it feel? So it's
Yeah.
keeping it super simple.
So simple. Yeah.
So on a resolution then, if people are looking to decide what do I want to do in 2024?
And say we're using a word instead of resolutions, because we've said resolutions are performative and they're outward focused, and they're not about transforming you into the higher being that you came here to embody. But an intention or a word, or even looking at resolutions differently and saying, I just want to feel healthier. What does that look like for me? If we look at it that way, in terms of resolutions, then it gets back to, there are so many distractions in our life. There are so many things that are going to come in and give us all of this information that we don't even need. The only information we actually need is, you've got a GPS inside you that tells you what the right direction is. And you could have 500 signs pointing all different directions out here, and you're not going to get any information from any of those, because none of them are attuned to your inner GPS. So if I go back to the house, and for you, the book, if I go back to the house, if I would have stayed, it would have felt like grinding gears inside my body. I just felt like I was working against myself.
So frustration
and confusion and
holding on,
Yeah.
like this, like angst.
Yeah. And it did not feel right. But as soon as I said, okay, I don't understand, this doesn't make sense, I'm angry at God right now because my family's still living in a storage unit, but I can't keep fighting against what seems so obvious. And as soon as I said, okay, that's it, I give up, we're giving up this house, we're going to trust that there's something better, everything flowed in to make that so effortless. But first I had to say, this is not right. And I'm just going to say no to this, because this is clearly a no. And then I'm going to wait for that flow feeling to come back.
So for listeners, part of this process in the new year is deciding kind of what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And for the things that doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean it's a no. It means it's a, well, what are the challenges here? And can you walk away from it? And if you can't walk away from it without it feeling like, oh gosh, no, absolutely not, right? If you can't walk away from it because there's something inside of you, then it's probably a barrier. And then to go back into the silence and ask, what do I need to know in order that I don't know
How
now
is
that's
this
going to
working in
help
my
me
favor?
through, it's going to help me through. Not even how is this going to working in my favor, because we don't need to know that.
You don't need to know how. Yeah, you're right.
We don't
You're
need to
right.
know how it's working in our favor. We just need to know, like, is this something that is it, if it's a yes or a no, if it's a yes to stay with something and to do something, then any kind of barrier along the way is solely, it's a barrier. It's going to bring up a lot of feelings, but it doesn't mean it's a no. Because if
Means
the
it's
overall
cultivating something.
thing, yeah, it
Yeah.
means it's cultivating something.
Right. So
Exactly.
here's what I'm picturing. Okay.
So the outcome, we can't be held to the outcome.
Right. Okay. So if you picture flow, if you picture being in alignment with whatever your intention is for the year, as like being in a stream that's rushing, it's pulling you along and you're just going with the pull. Versus when you are out of that, it's like hiking up a craggy, slippery mountainside. Like you are working so hard when you could just boop, pop over into the stream and be pulled along with the flow. Both can feel like effort. Like you've been rafting before.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't effortless, but you are in a flow that's moving you along.
What you're describing though is fun. So if there's fun with it, like I think that's a piece of this, and this is something I wanted to talk about for the new year is that oftentimes, you know, we hear a lot about feel better. Just start with feeling better. Start with feeling better. So sometimes I can get so stuck on, I don't know what to do, the uncertainty, is this the right thing? Like all of that doesn't feel good.
Right.
Whereas if I focus on, like, even just like what you're describing of, well, I don't know what this is cultivating, and I have no idea what the outcome is going to be, but I know it's the right direction, so I can just trust that. So there's something to enjoying it, allowing yourself, like the days that I get to write, like instead of being like, I don't know if this is going to be fruitful, instead of focusing on, I don't know if it's going to be fruitful, or I don't know if not any one of these pages is going to make it.
Yep.
Then it's like, but can I have fun still in that circumstance to know that I get to tell this story. I get to try to tell this story. I get to try again. You know, like it's literally a choice. And the energetic resonance around either one of those, if it's the whole thing is a yes, and I have no idea, and I'm going to do it anyway, then my attitude and my feelings around it and the way that I approach it could change the outcome, whatever the outcome was supposed to be or could be. It's probably not supposed to be, but
Yep.
could be. Like to me, there's all of these hundreds of different ways that anything that we work on can happen. It can have hundreds of different ongoing ways that we're cultivated.
So like every raft is going to take a different path
Yes.
down the rapids.
That's right.
But they're all in flow. Some are going to hit rocks.
Some are going to flip
hit
over.
more rapids. Some are going to flip over. Some people are going to swim for a while. But you're still in flow. And all of those things that you may come upon are cultivating something. They're teaching you something and they're working with you. Ultimately, if we can get our minds around understanding that the universe is always conspiring in our favor. The universe is always conspiring in our favor. And we can say no thank you and step out of the raft and decide that we're going to hike up the craggy mountainside anytime we want because it's free will, because that's our choice. But as soon as we launch the intention, then everything in the universe is going to rush in and conspire in favor of answering and putting energy behind that intention.
So let me give an example. This is important, what you just said. If you say in the new year, I really want to be happy. My word is happy. I want to be happy. And all of a sudden, when you're sitting, by the way, if you're, how can I be happy? And you're trying to micromanage the whole thing. Our head is what, 1 times per unit of 1,000 times of what our heart can attract.
Yeah.
So if our heart can attract 1,000 times more resonance than my head, whatever I come up with how I can be happy is going to be so weak.
Yeah.
But yet, if my heart says, I just want to be happy, and all of a sudden you have something in front of you that's crap. That's crap. Like, let's just use your car.
Yep.
I want to be happy, and all of a sudden your car breaks down.
Yep.
Now you could say, well, this is crap. I wanted to be happy. This doesn't make sense. But if you stay in a positive space and you say, I don't know how this is going to help me feel happy, because now I've got to go look for, I have no idea, but I have to presume that if my resonance is on happy and I really am emitting and I'm pulling happiness towards me, then whatever reason this happened on the other side of this is happiness. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have the potential for unhappiness in here if you choose to see it that way. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I also think that exercise we talked about, like if you set your resonance on happiness, the exercise we talked about with when is a time when I felt just completely happy? And what did that feel like? And then take that feeling and detach it from the circumstance and just feel the feeling of being filled and swelling with happiness. That's what that felt like. Now, my car broke down, but I'm still feeling the feeling of being filled and swelling with happiness. And that attracts the solution.
Let me ask you this. I think hindsight is always like, sometimes we forget, like you made some posts during the holidays that said that it wasn't so happy.
Yeah.
How does that fit in here? Because what I really want for people to understand is this is not linear, and this is not like, so when we say this, it's almost sounding like if you're not happy and you don't go out of the resonance of, if you go out of the resonance of happy, that you can't be happy,
Okay,
right?
so happiness wasn't my word. Like I'm gonna go back to my word and then I'm gonna bring in how I was feeling. So my word was abundance.
Yeah.
Abundance doesn't mean that I'm gonna feel joy 24/7.
Right.
Abundance just means that the universe has unlimited resources that it can move at any given time to respond to my desires. So back a couple, God, not even a couple weeks ago, a week ago, I was in a rut. Like it was bad. It was the worst I've ever felt, mental health wise, the worst I've ever felt in my life. And I couldn't see the light or the happiness or the excitement or anything. I couldn't see any of that. And I had to be super intentional about reaching out to people, asking for help, journaling through it until I could get my vibration back on the track of, I know the universe is always conspiring in my favor. I had to like manufacture some of that. I could say, I know the universe is always conspiring in my favor, and I know that I believe that, but right now I feel like I can't make it through another day. So there are going to be moments where it's going to feel crushing, where it's going to feel like I know that like somewhere in the universe, I believe all these things are true. But right now in this moment, I am a human having a very human experience and it feels unbearable. And that's okay. That happens. And we know given the outcome of the things that came after I went through that, that didn't derail the abundance that the universe was bringing to me. In fact, actually, it contributed to bringing that abundance, because that had to happen in order for me to reach out and make connections and let people know what was going on and wrap them into my life. And then those connections ended up being the things that brought the answer that was already coming.
So that's interesting, because one of my words for this next year is responsiveness. And it sounds like you were responsive to your situation, but in a way that was intentional, to where you were able to take action that was maybe not what you'd wanted to do, but yet it was like what you knew that you needed to do in that moment without regard for an outcome.
Right.
It was literally just wrapping people into the fold.
It was survival.
Yeah.
In the moment, it was just survival.
Yeah, but not everybody reaches out.
Right.
So you chose to reach out, right? In that moment. Some people don't.
Yeah.
You know, and so you let people in on it, which allowed for there to be space to respond.
And that's exactly the next thing that I was going to say. The last thing that I wanted to bring up in this discussion of intentions and entering the new year is, okay, I love this example. So I think it's a two-part thing. I think number one, it's getting clear on our desires and our intentions. And number two is the part that a lot of people forget about or neglect, which is making space for those things to fill in. So someone is pregnant, they're expecting a child. What do people do when they're expecting a child?
Get on a registry.
Yeah. Make a registry.
Yeah.
Clear an entire room in their home. Build a nursery. Throw showers. Invite people to bring them gifts. And the thing isn't even there yet. They're just expecting that it's coming.
It's a great example.
That is a ridiculous amount of faith to have in this process that we know very little about. Like, still know very little about. It's a miracle. I don't know how it happens, but it works. And then all of a sudden there's a whole new being that's in the world. Whoa. But we create so much space for that being to come in and wrap it in before it's even there. But we don't do that with our intentions. I'm a little fired up.
Yeah.
How the frick do you expect your intentions to come be born when there's no space for them to be born?
Yeah.
How? Like, that's ridiculous to me. Like,
although people do that.
Okay.
People do
Sure,
that.
right.
I've known people who pretended that they weren't
in the dresser drawer, man. It's
well,
all right.
I've known people who pretended that they weren't pregnant and then just like
Right.
had a baby.
Right. Whoop. There it is.
It's denial. And then the baby's there.
Okay, but that was not intentional.
Right.
We're talking about something that's intentional that you are calling in.
Yeah.
If you are calling something in intentionally, then
You're it's actually
make
creating
room for
abundance.
it.
It's if you call something in and you make space for it, you're allowing for the universe in your preparation to give it to you, because it literally, the universe is like, you have space for the abundance of this decision.
So I'm calling in alignment for 2024.
Alignment.
And what that means for me is that every opportunity that presents itself, every new day, every new circumstance is going to require of me tuning in and checking to see if it's in alignment.
I like it.
That's going to require that. That's the space that I have to make to ask alignment to come in.
I'm choosing freedom. I think freedom is my word. Although where I used to work, the spiritual director had these stars with words on it and several hundred words, and then we would pick a word, and I love doing that every year because it was always a word. Sometimes it was a word that I was like, I don't want this. and then it was like be something that was like great for me, right?
Okay.
Um, or usually I'd take a second word and then together it would be like great, right?
Okay.
But this year when I was with a friend of mine on Christmas and we created a vision board, freedom was the word that came up for me. I was like, for me, everything is about all aspects, being free,
We're gonna
which
pick words
means,
too.
okay,
Okay.
which means that everything's going to be filtered through that for me.
Okay.
That I feel this not stuck, that I feel that there's spaciousness in what I'm experiencing in my life.
How do you know what freedom feels like? What is the filter for the last time you felt like true freedom?
The ability to do what I want when I want. I have everything I need to do what I want when I want. If I want to do something, I can go do it. There's no limitation to it. I can't be like, I can't really do that right now. Can't do that right now. You know, so that I can do that. Like in my old job, it was like, oh, well, a couple times a year I can go travel, you know?
Okay, I'm pulling this card because when I shuffled, this is the only one that turned itself the other direction.
Okay.
So then I'm gonna let you shuffle and pull a card.
Okay, go ahead. You
And
go ahead and talk about
do
yours.
you want me to reveal
Yeah,
it?
you go ahead and do yours.
Okay. So mine is commitment.
What's it say?
My commitments increase my joy and freedom.
You got a freedom card.
My commitments increase my joy and freedom. So I think this is really interesting because I think people think of being committed to things as like tying up a part of their life. Whereas when a commitment is aligned, an aligned commitment adds to the joy and abundance and freedom that you're feeling. Like choosing that commitment intentionally when it's aligned for you is going to magnify and amplify those high vibrational feelings.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
So you got alignment and commitment. I have freedom and courage. I actually love courage. I live life passionately and courageously. Yes, that feels right. That feels right. And I do feel like I beat to my own drum.
You do.
I do.
That's
I
true.
beat to my own drum. Passionately is so true for me. And it's super interesting. I love this. I live life passionately and courageously. They could have put anything along with that. They could have said, I overcome everything that comes to me with courage, right? But instead they combined passion and courage. And I love this because that's my metric for everything right now. Like, and that gives me freedom. Is that I keep having dogged persistence, but yet it doesn't feel like dogged persistence. It just feels like, yeah, I do the things that I love to do. And I trust that even though there isn't the outcome that I think I want, I think that's the dog, by the way.
He was thirsty. He waited the whole time
Drinking.
to drink water.
But I think that when it takes a lot of courage to live your passion, because I can make calculated decisions, but to do something that has no known outcome, I just hope that I have an outcome. But to do something that I just love, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Do you know the root word of passion?
No.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No.
It means suffering. Hold on, because we cast suffering in such a negative light, but hold on, because I've said this before. I have said out loud, when love is super abundant, it hurts. There's like a pain and a stretching that comes with it, and it hurts. Like there's almost like love for my children when they're going off and I can't keep them in the fold, and I just have to trust that they're going to survive getting that bus to school and whatever circumstances they encounter. Like there's a whole part of my heart that's way out there. That love hurts, but I wouldn't choose anything else. Like, it's beautiful. So a passion actually means to suffer, like the passion of the Christ was the suffering.
Mm.
And so I named my podcast Passionate Pursuits
Mm.
because a passion is something that you are so committed to and you're so in love with, and it's so aligned that you will literally suffer to birth it.
May you have in 2024 courage to follow your passion and to have commitments that increase your freedom and your joy. That's what I hope for you this year, that you actually choose you. And I want to end it with, you notice that when you have things that you're focused on in this new year, I encourage you to choose things that it's choosing you. It's choosing you. By choosing you, then the people around you benefit. But if you choose to do something that you think will make others happy, but you're not happy, then it doesn't work that way. You get to be part of that. So choose what your passions are and trust that the commitments, the people that are around you are going to bring you more freedom and joy, because
whatever you have in abundance is going to spill out of your cup and fill others.
Exactly.
So if you are
My
abundantly depressed, then so is everyone else around you going to be.
Statement.
And if you are abundantly joyful and living in freedom and spewing happiness everywhere you walk, then everyone's going to feel that and benefit from it. So choosing you is not selfish. It's actually the most unselfish, most compassionate thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So may you choose you in 2024.
Yeah. Can't wait to see what you decide to do. If you don't mind, like in the comments, let us know what some of your 2024 hopes are
and intentions
and click moments that you had for this particular episode.
Yeah, and a special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can find out more about Melissa at melissamossart.com. Thank you to Cloud Cult for our intro and outro music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us. Highly recommend the live on KEXP version of that, which you can find on YouTube, or go to cloudcult.com to learn more about them. And to all of our listeners and viewers, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And we wish you peace, love, and light.